September 11th, the day America's past, came back to haunted Bharat untold. If we're being honest, the story of September 11th, 2001 didn't begin on September 11th, 2001. It started decades earlier, back during the Cold War, when the United States was funding and training Islamist fighters in Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union. They were given weapons, money, training camps, intelligence support. At the time, America believed it was simply weakening its biggest enemy. But what nobody imagined, not even in their worst nightmares, was that one day, some of those same extremist networks would evolve into something far more dangerous. And, eventually, that fire would come back to America itself. Collapsing buildings, smoke covering the sky, people running through the streets covered in ash, fear on every face, panic everywhere. It looked like a war zone. But it wasn't Iraq, it wasn't Afghanistan, it was New York City, the financial capital of the United States. And on the morning of September 11th, 2001, America changed forever. In just 102 minutes, nearly 3,000 people were killed. More than 6,000 were injured. And the attacks left behind a wound so deep that the country still carries it today. After 9/11, America launched a global war on terror. Wars that would reshape Afghanistan, Iraq, the Middle East, and the modern world itself. But the real question is, how did this happen? How did the most powerful country on Earth fail to stop an attack planned for years? Who carried it out, and why? September 11th, 2001 started like any other Tuesday morning. People were heading to work, coffee shops were busy, traffic filled Manhattan. President George W. Bush was visiting an elementary school in Florida. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, at 8:46 a.m., everything changed. American Airlines Flight 11 crashed directly into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The plane had taken off from Boston, heading to Los Angeles. But shortly after takeoff, 5 hijackers seized control of the aircraft. They looked like ordinary passengers. One of them was Mohammed Atta, a 33-year-old Egyptian engineering graduate who had trained as a pilot. The hijackers stormed the cockpit. The pilots were killed, and the plane was turned toward New York City. Minutes later, millions of people watched in horror as the aircraft slammed into the North Tower. A massive fireball exploded from the building. Black smoke poured into the sky. At first, many people believed it was a tragic accident. Maybe pilot error, maybe a mechanical failure. Even President Bush was initially told it may have been a small aircraft accident, so he stayed calm and continued sitting with the students in the classroom. But in New York, the situation was already spiraling out of control. Rescue operations had barely begun when, 17 minutes later, another plane appeared, United Airlines Flight 175. And this time, America watched it happen live on television. The second aircraft crashed directly into the South Tower. Another explosion, another fireball, and in that instant, everyone understood. This was not an accident. America was under attack. Panic spread across Manhattan. Police officers screamed for people to run. Office workers flooded the streets. Smoke swallowed entire blocks. Inside the towers, thousands of people were trapped. Some called their families one last time. Others left goodbye messages. Many never made it out. Then authorities learned something even more terrifying. There weren't just 2 hijacked planes. There were 4. American Airlines Flight 77 had turned toward Washington, D.C. Its target, the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. military. At 9:37 a.m., the plane crashed into the building. Now it was clear. This was a coordinated terrorist attack against the United States. Flights across the country were grounded. American airspace shut down completely, but the worst was still coming. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. After burning for less than an hour, the entire skyscraper came crashing down into a cloud of dust and debris. People ran through the streets unable to breathe. Some were completely covered in ash, others stood frozen in shock. Then, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed too. The skyline of New York changed forever, but one final hijacked aircraft was still in the air, United Airlines Flight 93. Passengers on board had learned through phone calls what was happening. They realized their plane was part of the attack, and instead of waiting to die, they fought back. Passengers rushed the hijackers. A violent struggle broke out inside the cockpit. Moments later, the plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. Investigators believe the passengers prevented the aircraft from reaching its intended target, possibly the White House or the U.S. Capitol. That morning, nearly 3,000 people died. Firefighters, police officers, office workers, pilots, parents, children. But 9/11 wasn't only a terrorist attack. It was also one of the greatest intelligence failures in American history. Later investigations revealed that U.S. intelligence agencies had already encountered some of the hijackers before the attacks. 2 future hijackers had even attended a suspicious extremist meeting in Malaysia while being monitored by the CIA. But critical information was never fully shared with the FBI. That failure became one of the biggest controversies surrounding 9/11. The hijackers entered the United States legally. They trained openly. Some even attended American flight schools, and then they carried out the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history. But the deeper roots of 9/11 go back even further, to Afghanistan in 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded the country during the Cold War. The United States wanted to stop Soviet influence at any cost, so America began supporting Afghan Mujahideen fighters resisting Soviet forces. Weapons were supplied, money poured in, training programs were established with help from Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Over time, the war became more than geopolitics. It became ideological. Foreign fighters from across the Muslim world traveled to Afghanistan for what they believed was a holy war. Among them was a wealthy Saudi man named Osama bin Laden. At first, his focus was the Soviet Union, but after the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan, his hatred shifted toward America, especially because of increasing U.S. military involvement in the Middle East, and America's support for Israel. Over time, bin Laden and al-Qaeda transformed into one of the deadliest extremist organizations on Earth. In 1998, al-Qaeda bombed U.S. embassies in East Africa, but 9/11 became their most devastating operation. After the attacks, America changed overnight. Airports changed, security laws changed, surveillance expanded, and in October 2001, the United States invaded Afghanistan. The target was clear: destroy al-Qaeda, capture Osama bin Laden, remove the Taliban from power. The war would last for years. Thousands more would die. And finally, in 2011, U.S. Navy SEALs located and killed Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad, Pakistan. America got revenge. Not just for Americans, but for millions of people across Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. And maybe that's why 9/11 isn't just an American story. It's the story of the moment the entire world changed forever.